You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with your host Jimmy Petruzzi on the Friday Sports Show, bringing you all the news from the local area and around the world. And we're very privileged on this show to have interesting guests from a wide range of sports, world-class athletes, coaches and sports participants, but also, we get in and around the local area, and our aim is to inspire a generation of athletes and sports people. And today we're going to sort of focus the emphasis on something a little bit different. It's an important area of any sport, and generally speaking, sport probably wouldn't go on if we didn't have people refereeing games. And we've got one of the best referees. You look from the Premier League point of view. Our next guest was, highly influential. He's going to share his story as well. It's a very powerful, inspiring story, and hopefully gives a bit of an insight. Possibly it may inspire one or two young people or anyone of any age to get involved in refereeing. So, Mark Halsey, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Yeah, good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. No, it's really great to have you on board, and I think for me it's one of them things really. Refereeing is they're in a no-win situation in regards to you got. The game of football produces a lot of emotions. Obviously, people support their team, and I've been there myself. I'll be open and honest. There are times I watch a game, but you sort of can nuance that, and you can sort of realise the person's doing the best they can under the circumstances. It's not easy. So this will give us an insight in terms of what it's like to be a referee. But we sort of start from the beginning, Mark. How did you actually get involved in refereeing? What sort of motivated you to become a referee?
Well, just going back to what you were just saying, you've been in that position yourself of shouting at referees. And we're all football fans, and I'm there as well. I do the same thing as well when I'm watching my team. And I did on Monday night at QPR for Brentford when the referee gave a penalty against us, and it was never a penalty. So I wasn't happy. I think I threw the TV. I threw my plastic cup at the TV. I'm only joking, but listen, it's as referees, as I say, we go out to do battle. You're never going to please 22 players, but you go out and once you cross that white line, everybody knew what they were getting from Mark Halsey. And going back to the beginning, I was a semi-professional footballer for many years at various clubs. And I just think, I think I was around about 28, 29. I just got a bit fed up with playing, and I decided I fancied getting into refereeing. Well, I was asked did I fancy getting into refereeing, and it was a good friend of mine who was a referee at the time in the Welling Hatfield Sunday League, where I originate from. And I just told him politely where to go. There's absolutely no chance of me becoming a referee. Obviously, I can't say on the show what I said, but as you can imagine. But no, it's just no way that I was going to become a referee. And then, because he's house-backed on, because I love me cricket. I'm a big cricket fan. I've played club cricket for many years. And when we were just happened to walk around the cricket pitch one Saturday afternoon, he grabbed me again and said, "Listen, have a little think about it, what I said, and perhaps, become a referee, do something different." And I thought about it, and I went back to him and I just said, "Listen, look, I'll do it, but I'm not sitting down taking an 8-week course, because it's about an 8 or 9 week course. Okay. To go through all the laws." And I said, "Listen, I'll read the laws of the game. I'll take the exam. If I pass, I pass. If I don't, I don't." And I read the laws of the game, took the test, and passed. And then, I was sort of refereeing Sunday mornings in the Welling Hatfield Sunday League, and still playing. I was playing sort of my local team, Welling Garden City, in the South Midlands League. So I was sort of playing weekends and refereeing Sundays, and then I sort of enjoyed it. And then I sort of I had to make that decision: do I want to carry on playing, or do I want to referee? And I decided to hang up me boots and me gloves, because I was a goalkeeper. And then I sort of went down the referee path, and it suited me. I enjoyed it. I have to say I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I mean, don't necessarily mean that ex-players will make good referees, but I I seem to. And I always remember I wanted to referee games how I like referees to referee my games, and that's let the game flow and engage and talk with the players, give them a chance, and that was something I took all through my career. I think that's why I sort of I rose to the top pretty quickly, from I think it was 89, and by 1996 I was refereeing in the Football League Middle, and then obviously 99 into the Premier League. So I look back and I think I was lucky. I had a fantastic career. Perhaps it ended a little bit too early, but there was reasons why. But yeah, that's how I got into refereeing.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, the pathway that you got into refereeing. Obviously there's variable pathways. There doesn't seem to be any specific set pathway in terms of how people make that decision. But equally, if you sort of go on a Sunday morning to junior games, youth games, you get sort of young people getting into refereeing. I think for me there's a challenge, Mark, in getting people to want to be referees, and obviously you've got to be, I would think, a resilient person and highly conscientious to sort of take any sort of abuse and sort of keep going, which does happen. I mean, it's okay to be, one's not Pollyanna suggesting that things don't get said, and I certainly hear things, and certainly in my time working in football, specifically when I used to take a walk on the Centre of Excellence pitches, and sort of you could hear parents and things that were being said, and I don't think anyone should be subject to that sort of abuse. We can all appreciate in the heat of the moment we'll say things, but to keep it going. And what would you say to any sort of young person looking to get into refereeing? Mark, you've been there, you've done that, you're one of those successful referees, certainly in the Premiership. What would you say to any young person considering going on the refereeing path?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think you touched on it there. As a referee at any age, you've got to be mentally tough and mentally strong. I mean, I came straight into refereeing senior football, so I never done refereed at youth level or youth football, but I've walked around the local parks and I've seen some of the abuse the parents shout at these young referees, and some of these guys are only 15, 16 themselves refereeing like 13, 14-year-old boys. So if I walked around the field, would they want me to shout at their children like they shout at that referee? No, they wouldn't. And I think we've got to protect our young referees, because they're leading the game thick and fast, and we cannot afford our young referees to leave the game, because without a referee there's no game. And I think that it's the club's responsibility to look after that young referee, and they should have the liaison officer or the club secretary that looks after that referee from the moment he arrives to the moment he leaves. And if there's any parents that are giving some abuse with insulting language to that young referee on the pitch, then they should be asked to leave by that club member.
Absolutely, yeah.
They should be asked to leave the area, the field of play, and go, and perhaps even discipline their own children. Say, right, for that your child is not playing, is suspended for 2 weeks, because we cannot have that at our facilities. We need to protect these young referees. We want these young referees to go on into senior football, and someone will make it into the Premier League and obviously ultimate FIFA level. So I think there's a lot more that can be done at youth level for protecting our young referees. Absolutely,
that's a great point, Mark. I'd even go so far as doing a course in education, because there's a stigma around. Obviously, some people think that the parents who sometimes do the abusing, the verbal abusing, but equally sometimes they're sort of. Not that it makes any difference, but they are professionals themselves in their own capacity.
Absolutely.
You've got people who are doctors or lawyers, they're salespeople, they hold positions of status in society, but on a Sunday morning, for whatever reason, they feel sometimes they're entitled to give a volley of abuse to a young lad or girl who's refereeing a game, and that shouldn't be the case. And I think sometimes a bit of education and maybe a workshop and saying, okay, for the most part, some people are doing it for free as well. and they're taking time out of their own life as well, and that would go along, because I think sometimes it can be, it's almost like dehumanising, Mark. I can sort of get the impression sometimes people have grown up and they've sort of seen the referee on TV and they forget the human element around that person. It's a human being, obviously they've got feelings and so on and so forth, and it's okay to get frustrated, but there's a way of doing it, I think. And I think the players, Mark, also sometimes in certain situations could, this is just my opinion, could lead by example in terms of the way they speak to the referees. I mean, obviously you look at different codes and they've got different codes of conduct in sport as well, but what's your thought on that, Mark? And I don't want to put pressure on players, and I'm not saying they're responsible for people's actions, but do you think it would help if certain players in certain situations would sort of control their outbursts that are visibly seen?
I think it's a two-way situation. I think that also, it's about the referee engaging with the players and talking to the players, and the manner he talks to the players. The please and a thank you. I mean, I see referees at the top level now being too aggressive, with the players and not smiling with the players. You can do that at any level. Referees think they just walk onto the field of play and demand that respect straight away. It doesn't at any level. It doesn't happen that way. You gain respect by your decision making, your accuracy of decision making, engaging with the players, picking up things, awareness of what's going on around you at all levels, and that's how you get the respect of the players. Once you've got the respect of the players at any level, it will work for you.
Absolutely,
it will work for you, and it's about managing. It's about managing the game, managing the players, and when there are times when you get that opportunity to stamp your authority on the game, and you have to take it. And if you don't take it, you will be seen as possibly a weak referee. And again, that's where players will then get on your back and not treat you with the respect you deserve. So it's a two-way situation for me.
Absolutely.
With referees and players. And that goes at any level. At any level, the players know the referee. Whether you're refereeing Sunday morning team, the Dog and Duck versus the Fox and Hounds, or you're refereeing on a Saturday non-league, or you're up into the Football League, the Premier League. It's the same all the way through. The players know the referee because you're refereeing them all the time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point, Mark. I think for sure it is, and I think that the way you sort of respond to people is going to initiate a response back as well. And I think I don't know if this is the case, but in terms of refereeing, is there like a psychological profile that they do on recruitment? Because I could think some people, from a psychological perspective, may sort of struggle in terms of their own traits, going into that environment. Does that happen, Mark? Is there any sort of psychological?
I think I was brought up on the shop floor, working in factories, and made me wake up to a sort of management level. So I think that stood me in good stead. The way to manage and speak to people. I think it's. I think the young referee, they sometimes they're coming through too quick. So they don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to talk to people. So I think you're right there. It is difficult, and we don't want to produce robots. We don't want robots. We want referees. We must have referees with personality and natural ability. And that's where your good referees come from, and we've got to make sure. I mean, it goes through from the assessors and the coaches at that level. We've got to make sure that we're doing it in the right way. I always use the adage that good football coaches turn average players into good players into excellent players, and that's no different for referee assessors and coaches. It's the same thing. Good coaches turn average referees into good referees into excellent, and excellent into FIFA, the elite guys. So for me, it's very important that the training and education is there to give the referee the chances that they need to perhaps progress.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. That would go a long way to helping people, nurturing them, and just like you would do a football player, you sort of nurture them and introduce them and phase them into the first team in sort of due course. But one thing I sort of wonder sometimes, looking at things from outside point of view, Do you ever think, Mark, there's certain referees that might be overawed by certain... I mean, these days the footballers are mega stars. They're known around the world. You can go to a village in South America or Africa or wherever, or a city in New York, and people know who the players are now. Do you think there's a case sometimes where if you sort of work your way into the game, you find yourself in, say, the Premier League, and then all of a sudden you've got these sort of mega stars around you? Do you think there's a case that certain referees may be overawed at times, or do you think that they build up to that?
No, listen, I can only speak for myself there. I mean, obviously, you're going to referee a football match. Okay, the surrounds are different. You've got big stadiums, you've got their full houses, and you just got 22 players. And I just went onto the field of play and refereed those 22 players. Names didn't mean anything to me. I was just refereeing a football match, and hopefully to the best of my ability, and get through that game. Hopefully with 22 players on the field of play. So never felt overawed. Always nervous. Of course, always nervous before I went out. Once I blew that whistle, I was going to war with 22 players, and egos didn't come into it for me. I didn't, I never wrote their names down. If I cautioned them, it's just a number. Yeah. So, but no, you just go in and you go and referee what's in front of you, and you don't worry about it. You're not worried about egos and reputations and star-studded names. You just referee in a football match that constitutes 22 players.
Absolutely, and that's for any young referee or potential referee listening, that's sort of invaluable outlook, really, because you can imagine, especially in this day and age when the players are mega stars, and there's a lot riding on games as well. It's just huge and massive, the Premier League at the moment. And I think for me, certainly people, whether it's a Sunday League game they're refereeing, or to be able to sort of dissociate and see it for what it is, I think is really important. I think that's certainly a psychological skill to be able to do that. But yourself, you spent 13, 14 years in the Premier League, Mark. That's a long time to be refereeing at top flight week in, week out. From a physiological point of view, did you see changes? I mean, we look at the players, for me, they're getting faster, stronger. There's more and more sports science that's filtering into the game, and all these methods and recruitment. So we're getting like an athlete who we're building upon athleticism. You'd probably be in one of the best places to sort of notice that. Did you find, from your entry into the Premier League to obviously eventually retiring, that the game was getting fast, or is that just a perception from the outside?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, there's no doubt about that the game has got quicker. Not sure. I mean, I think it's just as quick as it was when I was refereeing 4 years ago. So, I think that and obviously the media and the TV now, and obviously the scrutiny you've got from the media, it puts a lot of pressure on referees, and their decisions are really scrutinised now, and obviously with VAR coming into it, and I think the shambles we're seeing at the moment with the introduction of VAR into the Premier League, obviously it's not been what it should have been. I think you've got to be. I mean, as a referee, and at this level now, you call on your experience. Your reading of the game and your anticipation of play. That's what gets you into the ultimate position to make the good decisions. Although it is a lot quicker. I mean, the pace of the game is quick. At the same time, as referees, you use your experience, as I said. You're anticipating play and reading the play, so you're in that next position. So you're there. So it's a catch-22 situation, really, isn't it? So it's. It is difficult, but at the same time, it's enjoyable. You enjoy what you do. You love what you do because you've got a passion for the game.
And your own training, Mark. I mean, as a referee, did you sort of train on a daily basis, or did you have like a training regime to sort of keep up with the game, or what sort of?
I mean, obviously we had a sports scientist, and we had a heart rate monitor. We have to download all our training data every day. I used to try to go in and train with Bolton Wanderers every day, so that kept me fit, and obviously being a player and being amongst players, it helped me, refereeing the 8v8s and the 9v9s and what players' attitudes are like to the training pitch and on match day, and it's exactly the same in training as what it is on a match day. So I got a lot of help and guidance from Big Sam when he was in charge at Bolton. So it benefited me to going into a football club to train.
Fantastic, and that's sort of, I think, invaluable for any young person or anyone at any age refereeing or looking to referee in terms of keeping themselves in the best possible physical condition, because obviously the demands, I think sometimes the demands of refereeing physically, people sort of, I wouldn't say undermine it, but you've obviously got to keep up with the pace of the game, which I would imagine isn't easy. But what I find quite interesting too, for me, you mentioned VAR, and I watch different leagues around the world, and I have a keen eye on Serie A, and last year the Serie A had VAR prior to the Premier League, and I thought, in my opinion, there were certain decisions I couldn't understand that got overturned and got given, really, when you look at it again. I think it's hard because you look at things in slow motion. There was just the other week I was watching a couple of Serie A games, and I thought, well, there were two similar situations. One gets a penalty and one doesn't. And I think what would really help is, I'm not sure if you watched the rugby, but I've been watching the Rugby World Cup.
I've been watching the Rugby World Cup, yeah.
And they break it down, Mark. They tell you what's. I think it helps a lot as a fan to know what's influenced that decision. And do you think that would help if they, or do you think that would be too much, going to the detail of why they've come to that decision? But would it be useful, do you think, from a fan perspective, to get an idea of how they've drawn that conclusion? Or do you think, well, you know what, just get on with it, you've made the decision? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think, listen, I think the fans have got a right to know. They pay a lot of money to watch football. Yeah. I mean, everybody wants to know what's going on. And I remember watching, I think it was the England-Australia game, where I think the final Australian try was ruled out for a forward pass. And as I say, the VAR came in and was explained to the referee it was inconclusive. So it went up on the big screen. The referee's looking at it. He said, no, for me that is 100% forward pass and disallowed to try. And everybody could hear, everybody could see what was going on, and everybody accepted that. At the moment we've got VAR for me, is not difficult. It's not difficult. You've got the four categories that we know what they are, and is it a clear and obvious error, or is it a serious incident missed? Was it a clear and obvious error? We've seen incidents over the last 2 weekends where it's shown to be that our officials are not applying VAR as per IFAB protocol. Now, don't blame the guys in the bunker. It's down to management. But they've Mike Riley's gone on about setting this bar far too high, and now all of a sudden it's come right away far too low. So I understand that they were told that anything happens in the penalty area this weekend, last weekend was just gone by. Any contact, give a penalty. You can't do that. And we saw again the fiasco, the shambles of VAR last weekend. And it's simple. The VAR is there to assist the referee, like an assistant referee, like the fourth official. That's what VAR is. And it's the IFAB protocol. The on-field, the final decision has to go to the on-field referee. If that means looking at the monitor, he has to go and look at the monitor for subjective. There's been so many decisions where our officials should have viewed the monitor as IFAB protocol. But unfortunately, the PGMO management are not letting them view the monitor. Absolutely. And I think, like all things, it's no doubt it's going to take time. But do you see it in time becoming refined, Mark? Do you think there's going to be a time when, at the moment, obviously there's a few question marks, but like all things that are introduced, it takes a bit of time. Can you see it eventually becoming a part of the sport and enhancing it, or do you see these sort of teething problems continuing? No, I'm a big fan of VAR. I mean, because like we said before, the pace of the game is so quick, it's impossible for the referee to be in that position or get into the ultimate viewing angle because of the pace of the game. Now, as I say, I think it enhances the game if it's used correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the moment, it's not being used correctly.
Exactly. Yeah. No, absolutely.
That's the reason why we've got this shambles. And, we look at the standard of officiating, and it's not what it should be. So if it's not what it should be on the field of play, those guys are then transferred into the VAR room, doing that as well. So it's a catch-2, situation, isn't it? So it's down to the. I don't blame the guys in the bunker, as I call it. Because some of them, they're like last weekend we had Mike Dean was VAR on a Friday night at Southampton. He was refereeing Watford's Bournemouth on the Saturday, then he was fourth official at Liverpool and Tottenham on the Sunday. Now, what if he had to come on Sunday in that game?
Yeah.
Now, he's not going to be mentally right. He's going to be fatigued.
Yes.
And I just think sometimes we haven't got the manpower for our officials to be officiating on field and then going into the VAR room.
Absolutely. No, that's really interesting, Mark. I think that's great in terms of our listeners. And sometimes, from a fan point of view, we watch the game and sit back, and I think it's really useful to have someone of your experience and expertise give some input in that, because obviously, people at the moment, there's mixed perceptions really. People obviously, no one really knew how it was going to pan out, the VAR. I had my suspicion that there would be teething problems when it was introduced, just on the basis of watching other leagues who introduced it earlier. I thought, well, it's going to take a bit of time here, but I do like the rugby model. I do like the way they break things down, but equally I wasn't aware of what you'd mentioned there, and I think that's sort of important to take note going forward from there. In terms of yourself, Mark, your own, you had a really successful career. Is as successful as anybody as a referee. It's been a fantastic career for you. Do you have any highlights yourself in terms of you obviously refereed some big games as well, and in the Premiership and outside the Premiership as well? I think you refereed the City Gillingham game. If it memory serves.
Yeah. I'm still reminded of that now by Gillingham fans. So
wow.
On Twitter, so they still have not forgiven me. But listen, that's I had a fantastic career. And a lot of people say to me, "What was your favourite? What was your favourite game, or what was your biggest game?" Listen, every game is a big game. Whether I referee in League One, League Two, the Championship, the Premier League, every club deserves, to have, top referees, and I always used to find it was harder going down to League One and League Two because it's a potential banana skin, and they realise that you're a Premier League referee, and the one thing you didn't want to get was Premier League, you're having a laugh. Do you know what I mean? When you went down to these clubs, so I made sure I didn't get those sort of chances that some got. So I always just give it. I treat every game the same way. But if I go back to, I suppose, one game I look back at. I mean, back in the Premier League, I think it was the start of the 2010-11 season where obviously I had to take time out from battling cancer. Yeah. So, and I was told if I survived, I'd never be back refereeing at the top level. And I got back, and I think the game I came back on was Wigan Blackpool. So, I was there, I got back, and I proved them wrong. And it was fantastic to run out there to the standing ovation I got from them two sets of fans. So, going back, I think that was one of probably my biggest and favourite game of all. I've done many big derbies, but that was the game for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of really inspirational, Mark, this sort of for you to come back and referee, like you mentioned, after, obviously that we've been through. It's hard to imagine what it would have been like. That's sort of a testament to your strength of character and mental strength to come back and referee. And in terms of yourself, I mean, obviously it was a tough time of your life, no doubt, but sort of coming back to refereeing for yourself, I mean, what was it like? You'd obviously been through, I mean, sometimes we've got to put things in perspective in sport, I think, Mark. Sometimes we look at sport and it's important to all of us. We all want to do well, and we've all got our teams.
Absolutely.
But I think, did it sort of, your own perspective on things, I mean, your own outlook, I mean, there's people out there who are suffering and it's tough, life isn't easy, and I think for me it's quite inspirational to to sort of see someone like yourself who sort of came back into the game after what you'd no doubt been through, and I see it as an inspiration. But what about you in terms of perspective? Did that sort of change your outlook on things?
Yeah, I think what people don't realise as well is that not only I was battling cancer, my wife was battling leukemia as well. So we were both diagnosed within 6 or 7 months of each other, and obviously my wife's still battling now. I think now it's certainly changed our outlook on life, and live every day as though it's your last, and go out and enjoy yourself. And it doesn't cost anybody to be pleasant and smile. So that's what it gave me. Just go out and enjoy every moment, every day, and live for today and smile, and enjoy every day.
Yeah, and that's really powerful stuff, and I think that it does put sort of things into perspective, Mark. I think sometimes we get caught up in our day-to-day life, and we forget about the bigger picture. And I think all in all, without getting too philosophical and deep, and it does sort of go to show sometimes, and I think as well what it highlights for me, Mark, you never know what someone else is battling, and I think that's a big thing for me. Sometimes just in day-to-day life, we kind of can be hard on people and ourselves, but we don't realise that whether it's the person at the checkout or whatever it is, and sometimes people react in certain ways, and we forget that everyone's battling their own thing that we're not even aware about as well. And in terms of yourself, to show that sort of character to referee after what you've been through and we're going through, it's really tough. No doubt, but I think another thing I wanted to speak about is what it's like to referee a game at Wembley. I mean, Wembley is obviously one of the most famous stadiums in the world. Everyone wants to play there. Wherever you live in the world, to play at Wembley is obviously a phenomenon. It's everyone's dream. To referee there, I can imagine, would be a unique experience. But what was it like to referee at Wembley? What was the experience like to know all eyes are on you in the sort of curtain raise of a Premier League season? What was the experience like for you?
Well, it's fun. It's like it's the same as players. All referees want to get to Wembley and referee at Wembley. I always remember walking out to. I was fortunate enough to referee at the old Wembley and the new Wembley, and we were doing the Gillingham and Man City playoff final. I remember walking up, out as the old Wembley, walking up that tunnel up the slope, and to 80,000 odd people. The hair stuck up on the back of your neck, and it was a fantastic occasion. I mean, and it goes so quick. It just went so quickly. Same as when I refereed the Chelsea-Tottenham game. It was the Carling Cup final. It was immense. It was immense. Went to extra time, and it was, as I say, once again, it just went so quickly. It was fantastic. It was enjoyable. Great for me and my team, to do that. As I say, it's the ultimate to referee at Wembley. It's the same as players that love to play at Wembley. Not many get that chance to, and it's the same with refereeing. Not many get that chance to.
Yeah, no, it must be an incredible experience. And prior to sort of refereeing a game like that, I mean, do you get sort of time to enjoy the experience in the build-up? No doubt, obviously, there are some nerves involved, and you're sort of totally focused on what the task in hand. And certainly when I've spoken to players, a lot of them talk about how they're so focused on the actual game itself. It's not until after the event that sort of sinks in that they've been there and experienced that. Is that the same for a referee, Mark, where you got...
Absolutely. I mean, you're looking forward to it, the build up all week, and obviously they're talking about you. You do a couple of interviews, and then obviously you get into match day. You're thinking about the game, and you want to come out of the game unscathed. You don't want to be any big errors, because it's going to be like being around the world. It's live on TV. The whole world's watching you, and you just want to come out of that game unscathed and not make a major key match error. That could result in a goal or a send-off or a penalty. So in that you have to stay, as I say, we spoke about it earlier, mentally tough, mentally strong, and go out and be confident, from that first whistle. So that goes through your mind, and then obviously you sit down and reflect on it after the game. and that's when you go back to your hotel, you have your dinner, you have your meal, you have a couple of glasses of wine, and you reflect on the game and how it went, and did everybody enjoy it? Were the players okay? And did you come through unscathed? If you come through unscathed, it was okay. But if there was a key match area that proves you were wrong, and you sort of dwell on that, and you're thinking about that, and you're thinking, how did I get that wrong? How could I have got that? Why was I in the wrong position? You just analyse your game all the way through, and looking back to if there was any key match incidents that you missed. And that was the same with most games, with any game. I mean, luckily for me, it didn't happen in the finals that I'd done at Wembley. But there were times in league games where you're driving back in your car and you're playing the game back through your mind, thinking, have I got that right? Have I got that right? And then once you look at the DVD, and if you got it wrong, you look at why you got it wrong and how you got it wrong. Hopefully you didn't do it again next time.
Yeah, no, that's it's interesting stuff, and I think it's sometimes these events are sort of priceless in terms of having obviously yourself having been there and done that. It's something you can look back on really forever. It's just an incredible experience, no doubt. One thing I think that sort of has changed in the game, Mark, I think is the advent of digital social media. I mean, you sort of look at the game and from the player perspective, and I remember when sort of digital social media sort of started coming into the game, and I was working at the time as a coach at a League 2 team, and there were things like MySpace coming out and stuff like that. I don't think it exists anymore, and then Facebook started coming out and Twitter and that sort of stuff, and I didn't think much of it when it was first being introduced, but then I would realise it had big implications in sport for various reasons, and for the most part it's quite useful to a point, but it's also a platform for obviously undesirable messages and stuff like that. And I can imagine that as a referee that is a potential platform for people to, it's okay for people to have an opinion. We can fully appreciate that. Obviously, there's a fine line between an opinion and people sort of, venting their frustrations in a way that isn't really, due diligent in that respect. But did you sort of notice those changes, Mark? Was something that you're aware of?
Listen, when you are an active referee, you don't go on. You're not on Facebook. You don't go on social media. You're not on Twitter. You're advised not to use it. So I never had that problem when I was refereeing. But once I stopped refereeing, then I did go onto social media and Twitter, and then I did have a time where I was myself and my family and my young daughter were abused, awful, and it's things that were said about my daughter that we cannot say on air.
Wow.
Things that they wanted to do to her as a 5 or 6 year old, and obviously the police got involved, and there was a couple of arrests and things got sorted. But as I say, if people sort of abuse me and use foul language on the Twitter, I'll just send them a polite message back saying, please don't use that, refrain from that language on if you're copying me into a tweet. So, but it was only that one time that I really had the really bad attack on my family. So I've not witnessed any since then. So people see me as an honest guy, and they ask me my opinions, and I give them honestly. And I think with that, I still get the respect from most of the football fans or the fans that use social media.
Absolutely, no. So that's a great point you've made there, and I certainly think for players sometimes, from a focus point of view, I can imagine that for players, and certainly in my conversation with certain players, that they are very professional and very focused on what they're doing, but equally they are human beings too, and I think there's a sort of fine line. Now there's banter, and there's obviously a one way to communicate with people that wasn't you couldn't do in the past, but equally I think there is that sort of fine line, and I think it's obviously there is a point that I think that for sure it gets passed on to the authorities, and that's the end of that. I mean, no one should have to deal with the certain abuse that sometimes we see on social media. But like all things, I think it is a minority, but obviously a minority of any majority can be too much, no doubt. I mean, I'm not sure. We've sort of spoke very briefly off air, Mark, about some of the there was a meme going around, and quote about refereeing and so on and so forth. And equally, when I'd seen that, I thought straight away, you sort of question it. But unfortunately, we live in a day and age where people can attribute quotes to anybody, and it's sort of centred around refereeing, turning a blind eye. So I just wanted to sort of clear that up, Mark, in terms of you probably that you'll have seen it yourself. Really, the quote being about referees turning a blind eye to certain decisions. What's your take on that, Mark? I mean, what?
Well, it's been doing the rounds for about 4 years now, and it's absolutely shocking, the lengths that some people go to and put in false quotes. As I said, it's absolutely, as I said before, it's absolutely fake, and I can't possibly understand what joy people get out of making up these quotes and attribute them to like myself. It's defamation of character. I mean, that quote I did try and find out through police and people that to try and track down the source, but unfortunately it couldn't be done. So you move on, you laugh at it, you look at it, you laugh at it, and you just move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was considering not even giving it any airtime, but I thought I'd sort of clear it up. And I just find it disappointing in one sense, really, because obviously, as useful as obviously social media is, that's the sort of the dark side to it too. And you people can sort of make whatever up, but it's been great of you to sort of clear that up for anybody who's sort of seen. They can obviously hear from yourself, which I think is always the logical thing to do. If you see anything on the internet, ask the person before one makes any assumptions. And sort of going forward in terms of your own career, obviously you're doing TV work as well, and I've sort of seen some of your commentary, which is fantastic on BT, is it, Mark? That's obviously things didn't work out as well as they should have done there. I mean, I was under orders, working different things and saying things and being honest, and obviously certain people didn't like it, and things happened, and then you move on. So I enjoyed it. I do a bit of BN Sport now out in Doha with Richie Keys and Andy Gray, which when I get out there I enjoy. Always on the phone to them every weekend, giving them advice on the laws of the game. And I do obviously do my column in the Sun newspaper, which I really enjoy. It's interesting. Obviously, I get a lot of abuse from sort of fans from Merseyside on me doing that. But listen, I've got, as I say, I've got a family to feed, I've got a mortgage to pay, and listen, I can understand why they get upset, on that situation. But I'm one of those people, forgive but you never forget. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's just like, it's a sensitive area, and I think that it's a tough one. Like you said, you're a professional, and as a professional, you sort of you share your views, and you're an honest guy, Mark, and you tell it like it is, and I think that it's a tough one, really. I mean, these areas are sensitive, and I think in any professional capacity, there's always that sort of realm that we're going to upset certain people in certain situations, and I think that, like you mentioned, no one's going out to upset anybody, and you got to, sometimes, like you said, you find the work and opportunities that come up for you, you take them on board. And have you found sort of making that transition from some refereeing full time, well, pretty much full time, to doing what you do now? Was that sort of a tough one? The retirement, obviously, retiring is not easy in any profession. I can imagine the sort of, the week after retiring is one, what now type thing. How have you transitioned yourself, Mark?
Yeah, I think some. I look back and sometimes I think to myself, does it pay to be honest? Because I've had my legs cut away from me by certain people, at the Premier League. Obviously, legs cut off at the waist, and for my honesty. And sometimes I look at it, I think, should I have been honest? Should I have not been honest? And I think people prefer you to be honest, and I think that's the problem we've got at the moment. Honesty is, I find it difficult, obviously, to find work at the moment. But you make ends meet, and you do what you do. But listen, I'd love to be involved with refereeing. I'd love to be involved with coaching the referee. I think, especially at the top level, I think I've got a lot to offer. Being in the game as long as I have as a player and as a referee. But unfortunately, at the present time, that's not going to happen with present people in charge in PGL management. So, and there's a few of us. You look at the likes of my friend. I mean, I'm doing a bit of work now with a good friend of mine, Lee Probert, who started his own Par 4 company up. Looking after golf tournaments and sorting out training camps around Spain and Portugal. So hopefully that'll come to fruition. Lee's doing a lot of work there, and he's just retired through injury. And there's another person, they don't want him. Roger East has just retired. They don't want him. You've got to ask the reasons why. Why has Mark Kleinberg left and gone away? Why is Howard Webb in America? So there's a lot of excellent referees that have recently retired and were not being used. I find it hard, and perhaps that's the reason why perhaps some of the standards are dropping, because we've got people coaching referees and managing referees now that have never been nowhere near a whistle.
That's incredible, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But listen, that's life, and as I say, you move on and you make the best out of your life. So I hold no grudges. I mean, things went on between myself and certain people, and when I look back, I made mistakes, and I think they made mistakes as well. So that's life, and you as I said, you move on.
Yeah, no, at least you're honest and open enough to hold your hands up, and I think that society would generally be a better place if people had that sort of honesty all round. And I think for me, certainly football, it is a cutthroat industry. It's a tough industry, for anyone in any position, and it doesn't always materialise, unfortunately. But that's the way it is. I mean, all things said and done, it is a beautiful game, and we're all privileged to be involved in whatever level, I think, to a point. But in terms of yourself, I mean, one thing that's sort of curious in terms of referees, was there a referee, or were there referees that you sort of looked at and maybe admired or thought they sort of inspired you, Mark? I mean, you always wonder if there's if the referee had some other referees that they sort of looked at and thought, maybe not emulated them, but they thought these guys were sort of good. Were there referees that you looked at sort of in your own career and thought had admiration for, or did you just sort of get on with your own thing and sort of focus on your own thing?
Listen, you always had admiration for referees and their performance. When the referee had a good performance, but I never sort of modelled myself on one referee, or I was my own person, my own man, and I just concentrated on my game and not other referees. So I was my own person. I knew how I wanted to referee a football match, and that's what I done, and that's the way I went out to do it. I never emulated another referee. I never had a favourite of a referee. I never, as I was coming through the ranks, never modelled myself on another referee. I'm Mark Halsey, the referee, and I'll referee my way, and that's the way. And that's what saw me all through my career. So, and obviously, it worked for me. So. I was happy with the way I sort of viewed myself and sort of coached myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff, and I think that's a really great insight for our listeners, and no doubt, I find it really fascinating. And sort of, if you had to sort of go back into it again now, if you were starting from scratch again, I know it's a hypothetical question, and obviously it's not possible in one sense, but if you did have to go back, and I think this will be interesting for people looking to go into refereeing, and I think people like yourself, from a coaching, mentoring point of view, would be invaluable for anyone going into the game, not just as a referee, but also think as a player, as a professional, because the insights that you would get in your capacity are invaluable. But what would you say to anyone, or in terms of yourself, like if you had to go back and do it all again, would you do anything different, or would you, with hindsight is a wonderful thing?
Listen, I think it's like anything, and it's like politics. There's a lot of politics in all corners of the world, and football's no different. I think if I went back now, I think I would keep myself to myself. I'd keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't say things that I said before. Getting involved in politics, just go out and do what you're told. Within certain reason, and choose your allies and choose your friends wisely. Just keep. You choose one or two people that you trust. You don't go out and trust everybody, because it's the same in refereeing. There's people there to stab you in the back.
Absolutely. That's interesting stuff, and I think that that's sort of fascinating, and certainly people, not just as referees, I think that generally applies to a lot of areas where sometimes it's not easy, and I think one of the things I've experienced, Mark, is I don't know if this is the same with yourself, and in my own professional career, across various capacities, is sometimes the people that you just wouldn't expect. You kind of think, well, that's the hardest thing sometimes, certain people in certain situations. I'm not sort of trying to play the self-righteous role, and I'm sure I've done things myself that have upset people, but did you find in certain situations where it's almost like, you kind of think, well, not necessarily didn't expect it, but it's almost disappointing when it sort of comes from certain people that you kind of think, well, I thought they would have known better type thing?
Absolutely. I mean, in football, Jimmy, you don't make friends, but you make acquaintances.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that I learned. Perhaps learned too late. But as I say,
Absolutely, no, that's powerful. That, I mean, going forward, obviously, you got all this experience, and it is really fascinating stuff. And what's the next step for you? I mean, there's certainly a book there. I think a best-selling, book in terms of the experiences. And so, what sort of, where do you go from here, Mike? What sort of, just out of interest, I know you sort of do speaking and have a few things that you got going on, but sort of give us an insight in terms of your own career moving forward.
Well, hoping my phone rings
yeah.
to come and perhaps do some colour coaching or manage somewhere in the world. But listen, the book. I mean, everybody enjoyed the book. It was about me and my life and the Premier League, and praised the Premier League to the hilt, for giving me the opportunity to become a professional sportsman, just like any professional sportsman. So that was fantastic, and I say I had a wonderful career, and the Premier League gave me that opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I certainly suggest anyone to read the book. It's great, and I think that certainly if whether you're an aspiring referee or looking to get into any sport in any capacity, it's always good. And I think just to sort of to get an honest perception of one thing the listeners I want to sort of portray, Mark, is your honesty, and is quite refreshing in this sport, in sport in general. Sort of you come out and tell it like it is, and that's sort of quite I wouldn't say it's rare, but it is something that doesn't happen as often as I think it should do, in my opinion, and that's a sort of great thing. And I think that you sort of
You say that, Jimmy. I'm as honest as the day's long, and I look back and I think, should have I been?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I think that there is that sort of case, but I think it's a natural tendency and certain traits. I think you sort of go with what you feel is right at the time, and I think in one aspect too, Mark, I would say sometimes certain people, to get to a certain level in life, it's sort of living with yourself too, and it's one of them. In one sense, there are people who've sort of made it in life in certain positions by not sort of disclosing their true nature. But I think in life things do catch up with everybody in the end at some point, and you just you're true to yourself, and that's all any of us can do.
I mean, one thing, I can put my head on the pillow.
Absolutely.
And I go straight to sleep.
Absolutely. I think there's a price for that. But unfortunately, certain industries attract certain people who can put their head on the pillow too, even if they're sort of whatever they've done to get to the top, and it's just sort of it's a tough industry, and I think any industry with a lot of competition does attract that, but you do the best you can, and you certainly inspired a lot of people, that's for sure. And I think that the book's an amazing read, and I would encourage anyone who's sort of looking for a speak, or anyone in your professional capacity, to get in touch with yourself, because obviously the eclectic experience that you've got isn't ready. You can't teach people experiences that you've been through. I think are priceless. And you can read a book, you can do education, but for me, anyone who's sort of looking to make their way in the game as a ref or anything like that, in a conversation with yourself, and just this conversation you've provided on air today is invaluable. You can sit in the classroom. There's a course for everything these days, Mark. There's courses for all sorts of things out there, but you just can't substitute someone's experiences for me, and people sharing. And it's been a phenomenal interview. I really appreciate you coming on board, Mark. Been fantastic to have you on board, and I'm mindful of time as we sort of draw to the close. But it's been great to thank you. Really want to thank you for coming on board and sharing your views. And no doubt the people have really enjoyed it. But is there a way people can maybe get in touch with yourself if there's sort of any opportunities out there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they can. Obviously, they're not going to give me phone number out there. But obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, or they can contact me through @referee Halsey on my Twitter account. So
yeah, no, absolutely, and what a tremendous interview, and exclusively live on this Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show. Myself, Jimmy Petruzzi, Mark Halsey, who's come on board the show, one of the most experienced referees, and people listening will no doubt remember you refereeing, and they've probably you certainly remember the highlights. And I think that if they take nothing else away from the interview, is just I think the sort of the comeback you made to get back into refereeing after your own health issues, and we wish you all the best, Mark. It's been great to have you on board the show, the Friday Sports Show on Salford City Radio 94.4 FM. Thanks again, Mark, for coming on board, and we wish you all the best, mate.
Thanks very much, pal. Enjoyed the chat.
Thanks very much, Mark. All the best.
Take care.
Yeah. And there you have it. That was Mark Halsey. What an incredible story that was. Really, really fascinating journey. And I think for me, let's sort of take a moment to sort of process the interview. Mark's interview was just a powerful interview, and he sort of talked about his experiences in the Premier League from 1993 to 2013. And there are people, no doubt, who are listening to the program who would have seen Mark in action refereeing, and like all things, and as a referee you can't please everybody. There's probably certain decisions that he may have made in the course of his career that we may not have agreed with, but one thing for sure, the likes of Mark, he's played it like he's seen it. He's the call, and you can imagine from a refereeing point of view, things are going at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you've got to make a split decision. So if we take one thing away from the conversation that I've had with Mark, is that whether the referees, it's a young referee on a Sunday morning on a football pitch, or whether it's someone refereeing a game at Wembley Stadium, they're doing the best they can and giving it their best shot. And I think for me, there is a call, and certainly my experience have heard parents and people, and for the most part people do support, and people are do get behind them, but you can see that there are people who do shout obscenities and so on and so forth. And I think sometimes before we say, if you're a parent on a touchline and you shout an obscenity to a referee, just think before you say what you say. They are a human being, and Mark's been kind enough to share his own trials and tribulations, his battle with cancer, his wife, and we wish his wife well, and the things he's been through. And for me, just hold that sort of thought for a moment before we sort of say what we say to the referees. And we're all entitled to have an opinion. We pay our money, we watch the game, but there's that sort of fine line, and they are human beings. And I think if we're going to get that standard of referees come through, we need to sort of encourage particularly young people who are making their way in the world and in the game to do things to the best of their ability. And a bit of encouragement. I mean, how often do you see a referee get encouraged or get praised for a performance? And I think it's really important for some praise. Some of the younger referees who are looking to make a career, and it's maybe giving them some praise and say, job well done, you did well out there, and just helping them along the way, to become the best they can be. But it's been a fascinating show, and do get in touch. Do get in touch. The Friday Sports Show, the weekly sports show, Salford City Radio 94.4 FM. Do drop us a line and give us your thoughts on today's show, or anything else you've got, anything you'd like us to cover. We do aim to bring you all the latest news around the local area, and perspectives around the world, international perspectives, and perspectives from different people in different professional capacities. Do get in touch with us. Do let us know your thoughts. It's always nice to have people's thoughts. And do get in touch. I mean, we do want to increase awareness and participation of sport. We live in a great location, and there's so many great sporting establishments in the area. We're very fortunate to have that. We do want to encourage people to get involved in the local area. So it's been a great show. We really want to thank Mark for coming aboard the show. It's been a fascinating insight into the world of refereeing. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing this weekend, do enjoy yourself. And you've been listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with myself, Jimmy Petruzzi. I've really enjoyed today's show. Hopefully you've enjoyed it too. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place, Salford City Radio 94.4 FM. For your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Have a fantastic weekend and look forward to speaking to you then.